I always put it down there.
Okay, Roger, are we still connected?
Yes, I was muting it while everybody got up and was walking out back and forth just to avoid some of the
Okay.
background noise.
Oh, I'm okay with background noise.
Okay. Yes.
Because you're not going to, I mean, I suppose you could go and put it, all right, hang in there, get off.
Thanks, Celeste. Always.
Yeah, you had to switch to 4. So Ford has one set, Forest has another. And we had a problem today where Forest was they had actually changed the.
I don't know where it came from. They're all coded. Census. Mo. What's a mo? This is Louis.
My only daughter started teaching yesterday. Zoom. Zoom. State not
They a lot of their web-based front end, which is like the web page login, they had a security issue. They've been doing updates and things, and we were testing it.
You're off.
The application that we use was fine. It was if you log into the web page, you couldn't log in. But if you're fine, you're fine. And then if you're on the web page and you delete all your history and all of your cached everything, it works.
Really?
Yeah. So we were working with the judges to make sure they do what to tell people. But yeah, for the kids, probably not gonna figure all that out before school starts.
My daughter teaches first grade.
That happens.
And she's
That happens. But then, like, sometimes.
I've got college kids, it's tough to work with.
yeah, that isn't that.
Yeah.
Steve, these are. Now I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And I agree with that. I have no problem with the answer came up. Yeah.
Wait.
See?
You know,
There it goes. It's starting.
Okay, Roger.
Yeah, we're getting the live stream is up now. So actually, I'm gonna have Mark
Okay.
ask everyone to come in and get seated so we can
Good.
get started. Just give us another minute.
Okay,
We'll
and
have
just let-
everybody seated.
Sounds great. Thanks, Roger.
Everyone in the county boardroom could take their seats. We're going to get started with the committee of the whole. Mr. Chairman, I believe we're ready to call the meeting to order.
Okay. Do we have Mark Smith in the room?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Mark Smith.
Yes.
Smith.
Do we have
Yes,
Mark
yes.
Smith?
Yes, sir.
Good, okay. All right. I'd like to call, okay, so if I'm on, I'd like to
Yes.
call the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, August 25th, 2020 to order. Karen, if you would call the roll, I'd appreciate it.
Allen,
Allen present.
Ferrero,
Ferrero here.
Davist,
Davist here.
Fraz,
Here.
Hanson, Hernandez,
Here.
O'Shea,
Here.
Igbo, Kenyon, Caius,
Caius present.
Kopi, Leonard,
Here.
Lewis, Martin,
Martin here.
Molina,
Molina present.
Sanchez,
Here.
Shefflo, Silva,
Silva here.
Starrett,
Starrett present.
Surges. Thank you. Surges,
Yes.
Thomas,
Here.
Weber,
Here.
Wegman,
Here.
Wonicky, present. Lawson,
Here. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. May I ask Mark Smith to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mark. And I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance today. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of July 28th, 2020? So
Motion
moved by
Weber and second by Kenyon.
Mr. Weber, second by Mr. Kenyon. Any discussion, any additions, corrections, additions? Hearing none. Seeing none?
See none.
Okay. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen,
Allen, aye.
Ferrero,
Ferrero, yes.
Davist,
Davist, yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Hanson, Hernandez,
Yes.
O'Shea,
Yes.
Kenyon, Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Lewis, Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Shefflo,
Yes.
Silva,
Silva, yes.
Starrett,
Starrett, yes.
Surges, Weber,
Yes.
Wegman,
Yes.
Wonicky,
Thomas, yes.
Thomas.
Iqbal, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Is anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment?
See none.
Seeing none, is there anyone on the phone from the public who would like to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll go into the presentations and discussion. First up for budget presentation is Ms. Wegman. So if you'd come to the microphone, please.
Actually, I'm on the phone.
Okay.
The recorder's
You have
budget.
the floor.
Thank you. The recorder's budget for 2021 is primarily the same as it was for 2020, with a few minor changes. You can see that the amount that we have budgeted for revenue is $2,983,500, which is an increase from last year of $218,500. We're quite busy in the recorder's office, so we feel comfortable with that. I have a couple of other changes. There is no anticipation of hiring anyone. We don't have union wages. On the non-union salary and wages, I do have a correction to make on the explanation there. It says no wage increases budgeted. That's not correct. The amount that we're showing of $657,747 includes the 2% increase for our staff. The benefits, we're looking for an increase of $18,425. This is the only increase that we are looking at as far as our budget goes. So you can see that the revenue is $2,983,500, and we're projecting our expenses to be $828,064. So the difference between the $2 million figure and the $800,000 figure is money that is turned over to the general fund for disbursement by the board. Our increase that we're looking for, which is for the benefits, is 2.28%. And that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wegman. Are there any questions? Hearing none?
Seeing none.
I'm assuming seeing none? Seeing none? Thank you, Ms. Wegman.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is the treasurer, Mr. Rickert.
Good afternoon.
Actually, Abe, I'll be doing the slides. If you want me
I'll
to
just
just
point you
advance,
when you
just
go.
tell me. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Duties and functions of the Treasurer's Office include collection, investment, and disbursement of the property tax collection cycle. It's $1.3 billion annually. And Kane County just represents one of the 600 taxing districts we provide service for. We also prepare disbursements for accounts payable, payroll, election judges, and juror payments. And we maintain the county's investments with consideration for yield, liquidity, security, and money management. Estimated average funds currently around $340 million. As you can see from our org chart, we have a very small office. We have 9 full-time employees and the treasurer. And we also, during our seasonal high of collection, we have positions for 3 seasonal tellers and a consultant we bring in for assistance during tax collection season. When the season's over, the employees marked in brown go away. So like I said, we staff up and staff down for our collection season depending on the workload. Our general revenue projections for next year include $1.5 million for back taxes, interest, and penalty. We will also anticipate a sale and error surplus of about $21,000, leaving an aggregate revenue for the general fund of $1,521,000. If you look at our general fund expenses, the primary expense for the general fund for my office are salaries. We're requesting a 1.4% increase. That will provide 2% raises for staff with no increase for the treasurer. The printing costs are $21,000 and other costs make up about just under $7,000 for an aggregate total of $622,815. We don't include in that calculation the expense for medical or dental or other benefits because those are set and negotiated by the board. As you can see, our general fund surplus projection for next year after we deduct what we're going to earn for the county versus what we will cost the county, it'll be about $898,185 we turn over to the general fund. As you can see, for the county, the treasurer's office is a profit center for the county. So we earn you money for the services we provide. Going up next, we have our automation fund. These are funds set aside by collections that are done for the treasurer's office by statute. And we try to, where we can, apply expenses for the collection of property taxes appropriately to these expenses to offset costs for the county. Once again, A significant portion of this is seasonal wages, which go away. Our 4 people are the $37,000 that we collect. Collector operations include about $67,000 with a variety of things we have to do as far as property tax collection, expenses associated with that. Office equipment, printers, copiers, all the equipment that we would go with, scanners, money counters for the collector's office are all included in these expenses, and in addition, training and other expenses, for a grand total of $148,195. As you can see, we're not asking for anything more beyond the annual standard salary increase for staff and whatever costs are associated with medical and dental. And that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rickard. Are there questions for the treasurer?
See none.
Hearing none,
See none.
seeing none. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rickard.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Regional Office of Education. Our superintendent is Ms. Del Santo. So
Good
Pat,
afternoon, everybody.
you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be very brief today. Our budget is a level-funded budget. The only increases are due to healthcare costs, which are negotiated by the county and we have nothing to do with. The things that are funded in this budget are things such as fingerprinting, background checks, health, life, safety inspections of buildings, truancy, teacher licensure. Those are things that are in code as the county's responsibility. So we fund 6 people out of this budget. I have a total in the regional office of 25 people, which we have other grants and state monies that we use. So we are asking for a total of $320,825. We also, for your information, we fund the education program at the Juvenile Justice Center. And that program costs the regional office in grants and state dollars about $650,000 a year. So we give back to the county that $650,000. That concludes my presentation. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Del Santo. Are there any questions or discussion?
See none.
Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you, Pat. Next on the agenda is the county clerk, Mr. Cunningham.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. This is Tom Sherwin, financial analyst for the clerk's office. And good morning, good afternoon, board members. We'll start out with 2 organizational charts, mainly because we've grown out of one. This is the administrative part that you see. It shows benefits for each employee listed, and wages can be found at the finance website. Secondly is the vital tax, vital records, tax extensions, and election people, and their administrators, and that is the same. We have a head count of 40, and I will get into that pretty quickly here. This has been a tough year for the clerk's office in terms of what we've faced, especially with elections. We'll start off with revenue. All revenue accounts, with the exception of death certificate charges, are lower. We think marriage licenses and passport revenue may be higher when the various stages of the shutdown are gradually lifted and it's safer to travel. Through our first 4 months the fiscal year we're in, we were right on target with our revenue budgets, but obviously fell back during shutdown. This year we'll end up under budget by about 16%, We think we will increase our luck here in the coming year, hopefully, but we'll still experience a 5% decrease. Head count is 40. Staffing was increased to help the clerk's office keep pace with the workout load created when several employees had underlying medical conditions and could not work. The new state mandate vote by mail campaign has created huge election expenses. The 40 head count includes 2 new part-time workers and 2 vacant positions. Don't know if those vacant positions right now will be filled. We currently have 14 part-time employees. 2 former part-time employees are working full-time through the general election due to this mandate I will tell you about. Wages in general, union and non-union. COVID, the state mandate, and vote by mail are increasing wages and salaries in a huge way. Put together, the increase in salaries is about 12%. At the moment, 77,600 applications for a vote by mail ballot have been received. Each application must be entered into a portal where all pertinent information is recorded. The processing of these applications are taking an enormous amount of time. Union wages and non-union wages both include 2% salary increase. Our election judges will be lower in cost, but not as normal as off general years for election are held. When we have a general election not on the schedule, our costs for judges are generally about 55% less than the previous year. We have about $350,000 tied up in election judges and workers for each election. Usually, this particular line item you see would be down by 45%, but it's not. It's down by 24%. Fiscal year 21 is not a normal year. It's a year without a general election, but we believe that the vote by mail in fiscal year 20 that we're in will still be in place if we still have COVID. And the vote by mail will be there. We expect possibly 2 elections, one in February and one in March, one consolidated, and maybe 2 primaries in Elgin and Aurora. We have to ramp this up again for each election after cleaning up the general election in November. Benefits are down 1%, due mainly to insurance costs and the selection of the type of health and dental plans available being allocated to the employees that choose what they choose. Contractual expense are variable expenses. Election plays a large part there. They're down slightly at 3%, but not as much as in previous years. Security, equipment transportation, ballot printing, all of these things are going to increase in price. Above all, we have to make voting safe for everyone. Voters, election workers, judges, employees. It's our job to provide PPE supplies for those who show up to vote without masks and in need of hand sanitizer. We also have to sanitize every voting machine after it's used and use a disinfectant cleaning of every polling place chosen. Commodities expense will increase a great deal. $500,000 of what we're asking for there is the projected commodity expense for updating voting systems and accessories as needed. When people vote, it's essential to have a system that's efficient and works. The clerk's office has always been ahead of the curve in maintaining county equipment needs. Right now, we are the only county in Illinois that has the sorting capacity equipment to handle the vote by mail workload once the ballots are received. We had vote by mail in the past, but we've never seen anything like 77,000 applications for vote by mail, and it's growing more every day. Last year, we received the ballots. They had to be entered manually. It took 15 minutes to enter each of about, I think it was 10 or 14,000. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was 16,000 by mail ballots. This year we could face many thousand more than that.
Mr. Chairman, Cliff Surges needs to speak.
Okay, now, so let's see, Mr. Surges,
I can hold if you don't.
would you want to? Yes, please. Thank you. Mr. Sherwin, would you continue?
We have a sorting machine in place. It's the only one in the state, or the only county in the state that has it. And we project for just the number of 77,000 up there that it will save us probably about 19,000 hours of input on the other end as these are processed and come back to us. We're actually in the position of having to run almost 2 elections because vote by mail still has to have an election judge sign off on the recipient's voting card. I think with that, that concludes my presentation, and I am open for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sherwin. Mr. Surges?
For my colleagues that haven't seen this machine in action, it's pretty cool. I mean, if you have a minute to walk down and go to the back room at the election office, this machine is, I mean, I don't have a body of experience enough to know what a state-of-the-art machine is, but I was kind of anticipating an I Love Lucy skit, and this thing is just lightning fast amazing. Just for what it's worth, I congratulate you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Surges. Along with that lightning fast, we want lightning accurate, don't we?
We sure do.
So, yes. Other questions or comments from board members present? Roger?
Seeing none.
Anybody on the phone? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Sherwin.
Thank you,
next
Mr.
person
Chairman.
Up, okay. Next person up is environmental management, including SSAs and SBAs, Jody Wolnick.
Thank you. Next slide. Just as a reminder, our mission in environmental and water resources is to implement the King County Stormwater Management Program, recycling and waste recovery, energy programs, as well as resource conservation and other environmental activities. Next slide. This is just a list of the projects and programs that are involved in our department. Next slide. Our organizational chart with the change that was most recently made as of December 2019 was the moving of the partial planning position to off of 650 to the economic development under development department. Next slide. Starting with our funds, the first fund we have in front of you is Fund 420. This we've renamed as our Fee in Lieu of Wetland Mitigation Fund. This is for wetlands that are filled as part of development projects under our stormwater ordinance. This is a separate fund outside of the general fund, and those funds are then utilized to create larger wetland complexes within the county. The increase we see in this year's budget is for an outside consultant to assist our engineer, Mr. Linke, with implementing that program and improving the wetlands throughout King County. Next slide, please. The next slide is for Enterprise Surcharge Fund 650. We did a more lengthy presentation last year. This fund is being depleted as our landfill fund. Because of the projected reduction in interest in FY 2021, we're projecting a fund depletion amount of $16,065. This is up from our 2020 estimate of $74,000. But if you do compare the similar interest rates, it would actually be only a fund depletion rate of $60,000. So if interest rates average out, we're still making progress, but we still have a deficit in that fund as it continues to be depleted. There's no major changes to the rest of the line items on there, with the exception of the reduction in the amount of Riverboat funding that's coming into that fund for this coming year. Slide, please. 651 is the separate account out of 650 that's being used to construct the Kane County Cross Country course at Settlers Hill. All we have in the fund this coming year is the payout of the final retainage to our consultant and contractor, and also the construction of a temporary storage building for the Runners Club. And no general funds, again, are used in either of these funds. Next slide, please. Our electric aggregation program continues to run strongly. Our rates that were received for our residents this year are below ComEd rates, which is unheard of in our area, so we received very good bids for that. We continue to supplement the salary of our sustainability coordinator. 1/3 of her salary comes out, or just above 34% of her salary comes out of this fund, and it's basically a flat budget from last year. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is our general fund. The majority of this fund is salaries for our employees. We do see an increase in the benefits due to the amount of the benefits that were selected by our employees in 2020, and we will be coming forth with a budget amendment due to that change in employee benefits for this year. We don't have any other increases in our general fund budget, with the exception of the 2% wage increase that was recommended. And we have estimated a conservative revenue budget under the general fund due to the uncertainty with economic downturn due to COVID. Next slide, please. The cost share drainage program, we have a pretty significant reduction in this program due to the reduction in the Riverboat funding that will be received. Again, the NPDS program was moved over from the 420 fund, which is the wetland fund, to provide greater transparency to our Riverboat funding and ensure that we're keeping those funds separate, so it's more transparent for the public. Slide, please. Our final fund is the SBAs and SSAs. These are cost share loans for our older subdivisions that were loaned out of the Riverboat funding. They are paying that back into the fund and then are used for other stormwater projects and matched with that Riverboat funding that's coming in for the newer year. Some of these loans are actually expiring this year, so even in 2022, we will continue to see the loan amounts in this fund decrease until we're just collecting maintenance fees for that. Go ahead. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wolnick. Are there any questions from the board? Any discussion? Hearing none from people on the phone. Roger?
Seeing none.
Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Wolnick. Next up is development, including farmland preservation. Mr. Van Kerkhoff.
Good afternoon, everybody. So Development Community Services Department, we have a variety of programs, building and zoning, code enforcement, administrative adjudication, planning, the new KEEP program, economic development, and farmland protection and growing for cane. This is our department organizational chart. Myself as the director, planning and projects division, building and zoning division, administrative support, 16 full-time, 3 part-time. Here's just a summary of the various funds that we operate out of. The only one that is general fund is our fund 690 out of 001. That has a 1.4% increase. Basically, that's the 2% budgeted salary increase. We actually have a decrease in the amount of benefits our team has selected. And then farmland protection is the other one I'll get into as well. But the rest of them are various grants that we apply for competitively, or in the case of blighted structures, receive from the state. This is the detail of comparing the two budgets. Again, I just note the bottom line of the 1.4 due to the salary increase and the benefits decrease. Also just want to note that we're projecting again to be revenue positive by about $700,000. And then Fund 430 Farmland Protection budget. I like this map because it illustrates just how much prime farmland we have in Kane County that's worthy of protection and is a valuable asset to the economy. I just also want to note, because there was some discussion on the Riverboat allocation for this year, that it is going to allow us to double our money with over $600,000 in USDA funding that Janice Hill works with very, very hard on with the federal government to get, and our Riverboat monies match. And the staff that's dedicated to both getting those new easements as well as our obligations for checking on existing easements and growing for cane and other agricultural programs are not paid out of the general fund, but paid for by the Farmland Protection Program as well. And that's all I have this afternoon if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Hearing none from the phone, people on the phone. Is there anyone, Roger?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Van Kerkhoff.
Thank you.
Office of Community Reinvestment, Riverboat, Scott Berger.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure today to present our office's budget for your consideration. I want to acknowledge a member of my staff, Tracy Glassford, who is here with me today. Actually put a lot of work in on this, so I want to give her credit. For 2021, our budget consists of several special revenue funds that together total about $9 million. Our funding is primarily from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We also oversee the Grand Victoria Riverboat Casino Fund, Fund 120, which I'll touch on in just a minute. Together, these programs support a wide array of housing, infrastructure, and especially social service activities. For 2021, our budget maintains a level staffing plan with an FTE of approximately 7.3 individuals. Next, you can see our org chart. We've provided a listing of our staff. The salary items you see listed include a 2% increase, and the fringe benefits are based on the revised insurance rate costs provided to us by the finance department. Next slide. Tracy has condensed the HUD-funded special revenue funds into one table, which just went away on the screen.
We lost it. 1 second.
I'll just continue while we're getting that back up on the screen for you. This is a roll-up of funds 401, 402, 404, 406, 409, and 410. Basically, it includes our Community Development Fund, our Home Affordable Housing Fund, our various homeless initiatives. It also includes the City of Elgin's Community Development Program, as well as the City of St. Charles's Housing Trust Fund, which our office manages for those two jurisdictions. On the revenue side, the top line, you can see that we're projecting a 31% overall increase in revenue for these various funds. This is due primarily to two factors: an increase in our formula allocations from Washington, and also from an increase in program income that is received from the completed projects that we undertake during the year. When homes are purchased and sold, that generates program income that allows us to do additional work in the community. On the expense side, you can see our staff salaries have a 7% increase over 2020. This is due to the 2% salary increase amount, as well as the absorption of a full-time position in our office that had been shared with the development department. We have absorbed that full cost into our budget. Benefits increased based on the rates provided by finance. Under contractual, you can see there's a substantial increase here. I just want to remind you that the vast majority of our activities, when we provide funding to communities, to nonprofits, to housing developers, that's provided under a contractual relationship. So hence the increase in contractual items and amounts for 2021. Commodities saw a slight decrease. And then finally, we have a fund-to-fund transfer because we do use some CDBG funds as match for one of our homeless service programs. And that's executed through a fund-to-fund transfer. The next slide captures the Fund 120 budget, the Grand Victoria Riverboat Fund. You'll recall that this program supports activities and projects that qualify under what we call the 3 E's. They're educational in nature, they have an environmental benefit, or they help spur economic development within the county. We're starting with the revenue side. You can see that our 2021 budget is based on the most recent annual amount of proceeds received from the casino this last spring, right under the 2021 label. That amount is $4.2 million. It's a little bit more than we expected it to be. That's good news. And we're using that number as the basis for our budget for 2021, with the idea that those are funds recently received and then proposed for expenditures in the next fiscal year. Staffing costs and commodities are roughly level for 2021. The bulk of our expenses for this program fall into two categories. Under the contractual line item, you'll see that we have funds budgeted for what we call the external grant program. That's the program that provides grants to nonprofits and area units of local government during an annual call for project applications. And then we also have funds budgeted on transfer out. The bulk of our funding is transferred to other funds within your budget to cover county-sponsored activities. I just want to note that this year the committee did decide to increase the amount of the contingency for 2021. That is the $1.4 million figure that you see 4 lines from the bottom. That in essence represents some savings that the committee is proposing for the future, because we are unfortunately projecting in the future our revenues are going to decline. The casino was closed for a quarter of the year and is operating currently under a reduced capacity. So that is the revenues that they collect this year will directly affect the amount of your proceeds next spring. So we're expecting the proceeds next spring will be about half of what they were most recently. So that's 2.1 million is our ballpark estimate that we're working with. And then finally, I just want to mention this budget was reviewed and approved by the Riverboat Committee at their meeting last month. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berger. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none from the phone. Roger?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none. Just one question. When have you scheduled the next quarterly Workforce Investment Board meeting, either remotely or in person or the hybrid?
I don't believe we have one scheduled at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next on the schedule is Building Management, Mr. Sparks.
Just give me 1 second. We're going to try and locate his presentation.
Okay.
Just 1 second, Ricky, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, here you go.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Ricky Sparks, Executive Director of Building Management. I'm going through Building Management is one of 3 budgets that I propose for your considerations this evening. Our missions and goals have not changed from last year, so we can skip to the next slide. Here's our organizational chart. I'll go through my direct reports. So as you can see, I have a Director of Building Management, Rick Griffin. I have a Director of Capital Projects, Chris Allen. I have Mill Creek's Associate, Bill Earl. I also have Administrative Assistant, Lily Craig. Next slide. Here's our building staffing for the various locations. For government, the government center, you can see our list here of staffing and our staffing levels. Also, you can see our salaries for the 2020 year. We go down to the Judicial Center. You can see our totals there and our staffing levels and the individuals that are staffed at those locations. Then we go down to the Judicial Center. You can see the staffing level for that facility as well. The old courthouse, and then finally the sheriff building as well. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide is our budget analysis of the various locations. This is all inclusive of expenses and salary. For our budget submitted for 2021 is $5,875,558. Slide. This is our budget analysis. So our 2021 budget again is $5,875,555. The one thing that you need to note is that we are short one individual as far as head count goes. That concludes my presentation for building management.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sparks. Any questions or comments, discussion on this portion of Mr. Sparks' presentation? I'm hearing none on the phone. Roger?
Hearing none in the room.
Okay, seeing none. Next is the Mill Creek presentation, Mr. Sparks. Thank you.
Separate. 1 second.
I'm waiting for the slides.
Just give me 1 second. We'll get you the Mill Creek. Some of them were labeled different. Okay.
Okay. Next slide. Our missions and services have not changed. They remain the same as last year. Go to the next slide. Here's our organizational chart. There's myself on there. We have a Mill Creek coordinator, Bill Earl, and we do get support from the GIS mapping department. Next slide. Here's our budget analysis. Our proposed budget for 2021 is $750,308,000. Next slide. And final slide again is our budget analysis. Everything remains the same as last year in terms of head count. We did include the increase in insurance rates. And so our total budget for next year proposed is $747,908. That concludes my presentation for Mill Creek.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, discussion, comment on Mill Creek? Hearing none from people on the phone. Roger?
None. Okay,
seeing none. Mr. Sparks, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Earl has retired. Is that correct? And are there any plans as far as the next replacement?
Yes, that's correct. Bill Earl, his last day is actually this Friday. We do have plans that I plan to bring forward to the administration committee as how to fill that vacancy.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that takes care of that one. Let's see, the capital budget, Mr. Sparks.
Okay.
Okay. All right, for capital budget, Roger, I'm going to ask you to skip to slide 8.
8. There.
Yes. So slide 8 for a capital budget for 2021. It's a total of $3,666,656. We have capital improvement projects of $1,930,000. Miscellaneous capital items of $207,666. Informational technology capital plans for $1,228,990, and we have a contingency of $300,000. Let's get to slide number 10. Slide number 10, this is itemized list of the projects that we have planned. I'll talk through the first two categories, which would be capital facilities, capital improvement projects, and then miscellaneous capital items. And Mr. Feinstock will talk through information technology. So for the first item we have here is architectural programming for a total of $300,000. We have our energy efficiency program for $150,000. Renovation of elevator BA, this building, $130,000. We have fleet maintenance demolition. We want to these next three will be demolition of the items on the Fabian property. So we're talking about demolishing the fleet maintenance building. The building management currently occupies a building over there, and then also the coroner's office. All of these will be vacating as we move out into multi-use facility. The next item is Building B lower roof replacement. And then we have a standard countywide carpet and furniture replacement categories, our sidewalks and repair replacement, and then our parking lots, seal coating and striping. The next category is miscellaneous items. These are requests made by the various departments. We have the coroner's office for $75,000 for furniture for the multi-use facility. We have the state's attorney's office for chairs, and then we have the IT department for a new vehicle and building management for a new vehicle as well. Those are the items I have for under building management. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me before I turn it over to Roger.
Okay, are there any questions either on the phone or in person? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you, Ricky. And then Roger?
Yes, the computer equipment and the information technology portion of the capital program is similar to years past. There is a marked increase in the capital program for IT of about $300,000, and that is reflecting additional equipment that we are projecting for next year as part of replacing and upgrading equipment. Some of that we believe may be addressed as we deal with some of the COVID and CARES Act funds in the next coming months. And it may be adjusted depending on what equipment is purchased in the next few months according to the CARES Act. So we're looking at that and trying to figure out exactly what needs we'll have, but that's our replacement programs for desktop computers, laptop computers, monitors, and all peripherals devices. Also covers network and telephone equipment. That's it for the capital for IT.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Any questions for Mr. Fonstock? Hearing none on the phone. Roger, see any?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you for those presentations. Next is Mr. Hans for the countywide IMRF FICA miscellaneous budget items.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have the first presentation I have is the miscellaneous budgets. It's about a dozen different budgets that I'll go through as quickly as I can. So the first one is simply the mailroom budget. We're holding items flat. We may need to adjust this if we get any new information, but at this point, we're just holding that budget flat. So it'll be the same as last year, $538,000. This budget would be contained within the general fund, and it's the general operating budget for countywide. And there's just a few items that fall in this budget. We have a consulting line item that's generally used for justice benefits. That's the consulting group that helps us obtain funding for the sheriff for the SCAP grant program. There's no budget there at this point. We generally wait to see how much grant revenue is going to be coming in, and then they get a percentage of it, and then we do a budget adjustment at that time. So it comes along with revenue that will help pay for it at the time. Then we have a few transfers that are done in 2021. That's the off year in which we set aside about half of the cost of an election, which is about $320,000. Although it seems that elections are becoming much more expensive, so we may need to look at that. But based on what we've been doing in the past, it's consistent with that at $320,000. Then we have the transfers that help to offset the cost of CANCOM for the services that are provided to the county, and that would be in court services, emergency management, and the sheriff. And it's just a 5% increase for 2021. We then also transfer a small, the required transfer of state income tax revenue that helps to fund the debt service for the 2013 bond issue. So for next year, it's going up $91,000 for almost a total of $3 million of debt service. And then each year we transfer $1 million into the capital fund, and so that remains the same. We're now looking at a portion of the insurance liability budget, which is the liability portion itself. We have the CCMSI claims management, which is just roughly the same as last year, but budgeted at $69,500. Liability insurance broker fee is the same at $36,000. We're increasing the fees for Laner Mutual. They're the ones who help us with collective bargaining agreement negotiations, but we're looking at a 4-year average that's increased to about 185,000. So we're increasing the budget for that accordingly. The budgets for vaccines, notary bonds, public official bonds is left the same. Insurance liability premiums, we're still waiting to hear. It's kind of early yet to have quotes in. So I'm just estimating a 5% increase, and we may have to adjust it if it's more than that. We also then budget separately something to try to help cover for what we have to pay out of pocket for our deductible. The 3-year average is kind of trending down now, so we're budgeting roughly 500,000, although every year it's anyone's guess as to what that amount would be. But based on a 3-year average, it's roughly 500,000. And then we also then charge out to the special revenue funds their share of these costs. And so that's what that $347,000 represents. This is the workers' comp portion of the insurance liability fund. We have premiums, again, are estimated at 5% increase. Workers' comp claims, the 3-year average has been dramatically going up. So we're budgeting $1.9 million. Hopefully that trend will be going the other way as progress continues to be made at managing that cost. But based on the 3-year average, it's at 1.9 million. And then the 536,000 is the cost of what is being charged back out to the special revenue funds. Unemployment, that's always a relatively small expense to the county. We're maintaining that budget at 45,000, less the amount that's charged out to the special revenue funds for a total budget of about 34,000. The county automation fund budget, it's a very small budget. It's in Fund 100. We have a small amount of revenue that goes in there every year from recording fees. It's only about $6,700. There's a small amount of interest, and then we're going to be using about $8,000 of the accumulated fund balance. And this is the fund that we try to reserve to help pay for countywide software maintenance. For in this case, it'll be the Nova Time for $15,000. That's our timesheet software. The IMRF budget, if we look at the bottom half first, where you see the expenditures, this is the budget for IMRF and SLEP for general fund payroll only. And you can see the general fund payroll for IMRF is 36 million, and the rate is 8.8%. The payroll for SLEP is 20 million at 22.54% rate. So the total cost of IMRF and SLEP per general fund is 7.8 million. If you look at the top, this is the source of revenue. So we're starting with the property tax revenue that we had last year. We have to increase it or shift more over from the general fund by 569,000. You reduce those property tax revenues by the amount that's uncollectible. That's the $30,000. It averages about 0.4% every year that's uncollectible. And then we have the investment income of 25,000. And each year we try to do a drawdown of about 10% of what might be excess fund balance to help cover the cost. And that's the total $7.8 million of revenue that's needed. And this is the FICA fund budget. Again, if you look at the bottom, this covers the expense of the FICA tax on general fund payroll of almost $58 million. And the source of revenue, again, you start with the property tax revenue that we had last year, 4.2 million. We have to shift over another 123,000 from the general fund. You deduct what's the uncollectible portion. You have the average investment income of 11,400. And then here also we try to draw down a portion, 10%, of what is excess fund balance to arrive at the full amount of revenue needed to cover that expense. The special reserve, this is something that is a fund that holds things that we set aside from one year to be paid down or drawn down the next year. In this case, it's what we're setting aside for the biennial election. That's the $320,000, which I spoke of on a few slides earlier. Then we have the emergency reserve. We're at roughly 5.1 million, and this is just the additional investment income that's going into that fund. And then we have the property tax freeze protection fund. That balance is at almost 2.9 million, and this would be the investment income that would be accumulated there. And this is a fund that we could use to help budget or balance the general fund budget also. Then we have the Public Building Commission. It has just over $1 million balance, and this is the investment revenue that will be accumulating there. And then we have our working cash fund. The balance is now up to almost $3 million. That's 3.3 million, and this is the average investment income also for that fund. So that's basically it. Those are the miscellaneous budgets.
You have a question.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Shefflow has a question.
Okay, Mr. Shefflow.
Thank you. You're using 0.4%. Is that what you're projecting to earn on these fund balances next year? Is that what we're currently earning?
It's both. It's from the treasurer's office, and that's the percentage that's projected for next year at this point.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Hearing none on the phone. Do you see any, Roger?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Onsick. Next on the agenda is the health insurance. So, Mr. Onsick.
Just give us 1 second. We're going to load his presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Surges here.
Okay, Mr. Surges.
While that's loading, Chris, I do need to leave in just a few minutes. I'm staying for the health insurance portion. I do have a client meeting at 6:30 that I need to get to.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know.
Okay, there's just 2 or 3 slides here. This is just a summary of what is built into the budget. So it's based on the 2021 budgeted positions. So this is not actual census, it's what's being budgeted for next year. We are maintaining in the aggregate employer-employee contribution at 83%, 17%. For those of you who care about this, we, as some of you may be aware, our percentage in allocation or between employer and employee has not been a clean 17%. It's on the HMO side, it was as low as 8%, and on the PPO side, it's been as much as 25%. So over a 4-year period, we have been working to move those closer and closer to an overall across the board 83% employer contribution, 17% employee contribution. So 2021 will be the 3rd year in progressing towards that. So by 2022, we will be at a clean 83%, 17% employer-employee contribution. So we'll be 3/4 of the way there next year. This is assuming for next year that health insurance PPO rates are increasing about 3.5%. The HMO rates are decreasing to 2.65%. Retiree rates are decreasing about 40% compared to what they had been in this year's budget. Dental, vision, and life insurance all remain flat. So this is the budget. We have the revenue on the left-hand side, expenses in the middle there. The revenue side is really the contribution side for both the employer and the employee. So this may be more detailed than you need to see, but I tried to break it out so that you could see the details that are also behind it all. So we have the employer contributions for that cover the health insurance itself. Then you have the vision, the broker cost, the life insurance cost, the cost of MERP, and on the right next to it, you see the budgeted cost. So in all cases, it's pretty much the same as what we're bringing in terms of contributions, but there are some differences. Like for example, the retiree, the county pays 10% for some of the retirees if they meet the eligibility criteria, and that's what the 40,000 cost there is. Then we have the employee contributions of 2.8 million, and then the retiree contributions of 344,000. So that's the total for the health insurance portion of the budget of 18 million. Then you have the dental, so you have the employer contributions of 474, the employee contributions of 301, and then the retiree contributions of 32,000 for total budget of 807,000. Then you have the flexible benefit administration. That's really not, there's no contribution towards that. It's really covered by the investment income. So the cost of the flexible benefit administration of 15,000 is offset by the investment income of 20,000. And so then we have the balanced budget. The difference of how we can balance this budget is if you look up at the MERP line, it's about the 6th line down from the top, where you see the expense side. That's really quite conservative. Expenses have been running significantly lower than that because we don't really know from year to year how much we could potentially reimburse for expenses. It's good to have a conservative budget. And so, but that is also then where our flexibility comes in covering some of the other expenses that are not budgeted. So that's the total there. I think just comparing from year to year, it's actually a $345,000 decrease. Much of that has to do with the 40% reduction in retiree health insurance expense. And then also there's a slight reduction in headcount from year to year overall countywide. That completes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Hearing none from people on the phone, any questions or comments from people who are there?
None.
Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Onsick. Okay, next on the agenda is the coroner, Mr. Russell.
Yes, good evening, I'm here. Okay, yeah, what's up? Hopefully everybody got a copy of the presentation beforehand. But if not, any information that you want, I will be glad to send it to you directly. I've really geared this presentation to be as simple as possible. I think what we do is not complicated. However, the actual implementation sometimes is a little bit more complicated. But basically, what is it that we do? Again, starting simple. We conduct what's called medical legal death investigation to determine the cause and manner of death. That's the statutory job description of the job that I was hired to do. Basically, that entails a lot of telephone information gathering along with the scene, samples, scene information, and sample collection. We work with the police and fire agencies hand in hand. We also, on occasion, about 10% of the time, we hire out doctors to conduct an autopsy, which is a professional service agreement that we have with the doctor. We also send samples to the toxicology, lab. And we do a lot of follow-up investigation and all those to can be generated, and basically it costs money to do that. So one of the big things that we do for our local funeral homes is we try to do all of this stuff within a timely fashion so that the people who want to bury and or have a final disposition of their loved ones, it's done in a timely manner. We also process FOIA requests. We have many other duties, too many to list, but basically we have, death prevention and public education and that kind of thing. For any more, if anybody would like any more in-depth of what we do, I've got an annual report out. Also the survey, the study done by Fiscal Choice a few years ago went through pretty much in detail. Getting right to the budget request, what we're looking for, $1,297,392, and that was actually an error. It should be about 1% to 2% of the general budget is what we were looking at there. So that was incorrect on my slide there. So how did we do this? How did we come to these numbers? How we estimate, we're very limited. Obviously, we can't tell you how many deaths are going to occur the next year, no more than the highway department can guess how much salt we need, depending on how much snow we're going to have. But basically what we're looking at is we look at the previous year's actual budget numbers. And it's been proven time and time again that we run a very efficient and legally sound office through the mandated study, through our accreditation, and through county comparables. Second, we search for anomalies, year to year to find out, well, is this going to be a consistent thing, or is this going to be something that only occurred last year or this year, that kind of thing. For instance, 2019 was a very tough year right from the get-go due to the mass shootings, so there was a lot of costs associated with that. Thirdly, we look at what expenses are fixed by contract, whether it be a labor contract or professional services, and if they have built-in increases, such as our labor contracts, and they just can't be lowered. And then, lastly, we look at what are the trends? What are the trends that are occurring in our nation and in our state and in our counties? And basically, we take all four of those different things, and then we make a fiscally responsible estimate based on all those four indicators. So first thing we look at is the previous years. If you look at those for 2017 up to this year, it's been a consistent, rise. And obviously for each year, there's reasons for that. For instance, in 2017, that was the highest number of opioid deaths we've had in Kane County history. In 2018, we had continuation of the opioid epidemic. We had a union contract that was ratified and finalized, and there was costs associated with that through back pay and that kind of thing. 2019, we had, again, I already mentioned the mass shooting, and the opioid epidemic continued. This year in 2020, it's been obviously very, very interesting in the fact that we still have the opioid, we have issue. We have other deaths that have actually risen by about 22%. We did a short look at what our numbers were from January 1st to July 31st and found out that we're 22% higher than we were in 2019 at that time. So that's the reason this year that we're trending higher. Not all of them are COVID deaths. I mean, at that point, we had about 250 COVID deaths, but we were 409 cases higher than the previous year. So what does 2021 hold? Well, we know that the COVID's not going anywhere soon. We hope it does. We hope that there's some kind of inoculation or something that will help us. We know that the suicide rates are a little higher. They're not a lot higher, but we don't know what's going to happen next year with the change. And again, opioids are up all over the nation, including DuPage County. It's very high. Ours, we've been consistently rising, but not at a level that is alarming. I don't know if that's coming or not. Secondly, we're looking for any anomalies, which kind of ties hand in hand with what I was just saying. This year, obviously, it was the COVID-19 issue. We talked about the 22% increase, which is kind of strange. It's not all COVID, but obviously COVID had a part in that. We had PPE increased usage because this is a disease where we need to use the proper material to keep us safe. And I'm happy to report that, knock on wood, none of my people have contracted COVID through the office, because we've been so diligent by keeping ourselves safe, using the proper PPE. And also we have to bring extra people to the scene to help us manipulate logistically our equipment and whatnot, so things aren't transferred. Another thing that we've had this year is we had increased fuel expenditure with the cooler truck. I mean, I think it's an additional $6,000 just in fuel to keep the cooler truck running. And when we don't have a body in there, which, on occasion we obviously turn it off. We don't continue to try to cool a empty truck, but it's still, we've had bodies in there quite consistently. And again, like I said, an uptick in drug-related deaths and suicides. So those anomalies we look at, and we take that into consideration. Third thing, again, we look at our fixed expenses, and what are those fixed expenses that we cannot really lessen and whatnot. With our union contract, there's a built-in 2.5% increase. With that, the lab that we use, and that every lab in the country, every year, the costs get more expensive. The forensic pathologist, asks for a raise every year. And they're few and far between with hiring those folks, because there's so few of them that we don't have a whole lot of option when it comes to looking for some competition there. And lastly is some state mandates. It's subject, obviously, to the amount of death that occurs when you're talking about fixed expenses. But I mean, there are new laws that are created. It stays somewhat fixed, unless there are law updates, changes, or they're created. One of them that was a few years ago was, we had to do DNA cards for every case, basically. So we have to store that. We have to process that and whatnot, and collect extra samples and whatnot, which is an expense. So fourth is the last thing that we look at are our current trends, what's going on in the country, what's going on in the state, what's going on in the county. And I have to say that, unfortunately, one of the current trends that we have specific to this office is that each year we have really not been given enough. We try to make it within the means that we're given, but this year alone, in 2020, we were given 37% less for our technical services, which is basically autopsy and tox, in 2020 from that 2019 line item. And that's our second largest, line item. Some of the other current trends we have, obviously, is we have the disease, the COVID. We have, opiates are going nowhere. We have social unrest and rioting, which sometimes death occurs with that. And with that, you can't scrimp or save on any type of autopsy or investigation that occurs with that, because it's only going to come back to bite us later. And I'm not going to let that happen. And we have a lot of increased police scrutiny, clearly throughout the country. So we have to do an extensive amount of due diligence on the front end to make sure that our law enforcement and our governmental entities are protected with the facts. So lastly, what we do is we take all of those different types of indicators, and we make a decision line by line, then we add up those line items, and then we make what we think is an estimated idea as far as how much we think next year is going to cost us. And after doing that, it was about a 7% increase over. Again, this year's total is an estimated, going on what the trends are that are happening right now. We're looking at about 1.2 million. I believe we were given quite a bit less, about 192,000 less than that. So the request for 2021 is about 1.29 million. So about a 7% increase. Go on to the next page. Again, if you have or have any additional questions or want more information, I'm more than happy to share any information that we have. Every purchase that we do is You know, obviously, just like every other office and department here in the county, it's obtainable. You know, so we have the annual report if you need more specific details as far as our operations, or we have the mandated study to look over. You know, please contact me directly if you have any specific questions. You know, and lastly, you know, please come on a ride along with us. I know it's sometimes people are a little shy maybe to do what we, you know, to be in the environment of what we do, but, you know, I think you really need to see how incredible my team is, because my team is incredible. The circumstances that we deal with on a daily basis would change most people's lives, and mostly not for the better. So, but these people, we work together as a team. We are a team, and we're able to cope together. We laugh together, and we cry together sometimes, and they are just an incredible people, and I'm very proud of them. And come by the office and observe. You know, come in, look. And coming soon, we just had our accreditation audit. It looks like I haven't had official word, but it looks like we are going to be recertified. So we are one of only 2 agencies in the state of Illinois that will be accredited as of right now. So that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none. Roger, do you see any?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Russell. Last on the agenda is County Board. First of all, the information is in the budget packages. I'd like to thank Joe Onsick for helping put together several of the assumptions, translating them onto the budget. Several items, and I'll just run through them quickly. We reduced the liquor license revenue from information that was obtained from Barb Garza. Names of, you know, on the chart that you have in your package for people who are either not running again, either from the board or myself, that again is in the package. They've been deleted and substituted to be determined. We're leaving the same health and dental benefits for the new board members and chairman as the previous board members and chairman had. There is a $20,000 of salary expense for 3 IT personnel who will be performing the community outreach function added into county board budget, along with about $3,000 of their health and dental insurance proportionate to the allocation of their salary. Didn't list them on the organization chart since the percentage of their time is going to be so small. In the last day or two, I believe that I sent out information that I thank Roger Fonstock for putting together of maintaining our contact with our constituents in the outreach program and doing it efficiently, saving $100,000 a year approximately net. And then all other non-payroll line item budgets were left at the same as last year, just updated some of the descriptions. So that's it for that. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none from people on the phone, any from people present? Roger?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, that's it. So I'd like to thank, so that brings us to the end. There's no executive session necessary. I'd like to thank Roger for all the work, not only today, but you know, every time we have these meetings and coordinating all the different directions in the technology, it's impressive. I'd also like to thank Karen and for keeping the minutes on this. I think that's it. With that, I'd like to have a motion for, oh, excuse me, any comments?
No, we had a motion made though, Mr. Weber, and second by Kenyon.
Okay, very good. And then clerk could call the roll.
Allen,
Present and I to adjourn.
Ferrero,
Yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon. Yes. Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Lewis, Martin,
Yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Cheflo,
Yes.
Silva,
Silva, yes.
Barrett,
Garrett, yes.
Burgess, Thomas, Weber,
Yes.
Wegman,
Yes.
Wonicky, Lawson.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance. We're adjourned. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Roger.